If you could take your seats, I think we're going to go ahead and get started with our Wheels Up session, celebrating the most exciting launches in ophthalmology. I'd like to welcome up my wonderful co-moderator, Nicole Fram, as well as our presenting companies from Zeiss to celebrate the launch of the VisuMax 800. Okay, thank you. All right, we've got Andy Chang and Dirk Muehlhoff from Tarsus to celebrate XDimly. We've got the incomparable Liz Yu and Aziz Mottiwala. And then from RxSight, we've got Ron Kurtz. So thank you, everybody. I'd like to remind everyone you can ask questions. We encourage audience questions to be asked. There is an app code, so there's not an app. Sorry, there's a QR code. You can scan the QR code, and with that, you can ask questions. There's the QR code right there. They will show up on our iPad, and then we can ask them to the panel. We do reserve the right to select which questions we will be asking. So please ask questions. You don't need an app. Just scan the QR code. All right, and with that, can I go back to my slides? Okay, so first let's just recap the notable launches that we celebrated last year. Okay, Evo ICL from Star Surgical. Oops, gosh, I'm sorry, I just realized the graph on this did not show up. It is going like gangbusters outside the US. Their adoption in the Asian markets, which is what that graph that does not show up shows, is wonderful. US sales did fall below goal in 2023, but they are growing, and the myopia epidemic, which we are all aware, does point to a strong future for this technology. So I think we're going to see continued growth in this. iDose Glaukos was FDA approved at the end of 2023, which is very exciting. And hot off the presses yesterday, they had a J code approved. It is J7355. Thank you very much to ChatGPT for this wonderful image. I think we're going to be very, very excited about this. You can do anything with ChatGPT. I think we're going to be very excited about this. Their release characteristics are truly outstanding. Glaucoma is a disease which we all know requires constant control. So I think we're going to see great things from the iDose. Okay, Ally, the LENSAR, I've got to really hand it to LENSAR. They are single-handedly maintaining the femto market. I think in the United States, they continue to innovate. They continue to bring new, exciting ideas to market. They have 56 units now installed in the United States from their launch last year. The revenue was up 23% in 2023. The procedure share is now 17% of the U.S. femto cataract market, which is a growth of 3%, and they're pending outside U.S. approval in 2024, so they will start launching elsewhere. And then last but not least, the Apthera IC8 Bausch & Lomb IOL. The clinical results are extremely promising. I think we've seen a lot of great research showing this is going to be extremely useful in a segment of the premium IOL market, which we previously had no answer for, and that's for patients with irregular corneas. I know that's been really great in my practice at UCSF, my cornea practice. Their launch has been somewhat hampered by supply chain issues. It has been a little bit difficult to get. I think the true impact for their launch remains to be seen once the manufacturing is up and running. And with that, let's move to our panel to discuss exciting launches for this year. All right. And could we just put up the QR code for audience questions as well again?
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. Is my mic working? So I think that we'd love to hear from, the companies today about where they're going, what strategics they're using. I'd like to start with Aziz, if we can talk about Tarsus. Do you have any slides that you prepared for the talk today that we can just put up?
Yeah, I think we got a couple. Yeah. I can highlight them from here, yeah.
So while we're waiting for those slides to come up, the launch, so far has been so exciting. Once you see Demodex, you can't really unsee that, right? So how has it gone in this first 6 months, and what does the success look like at 1 year?
Yeah, so I've been saying that it's easy to spot, and now it's easy to stop. with XDEMVY. So that's been, the tagline, because you can't unsee it. And we've been real delighted with how the launch has gone so far. The three key things that we put into place to make the launch successful was, first off, just a great team. And I'm glad to have Liz, who's our chief medical advisor, here with me today. And I think it's just representative of the diversity of our team, where we brought in some of the best in eye care, but also expertise outside of eye care and biotech that has really strong abilities in developing new markets and new molecules in new markets. Our market education efforts have been really key. So we've done a lot of work engaging with the eye care community 3 years before the launch, and then putting campaigns into place, and then our value proposition with payers. Reimbursement, we talked about a J code for glaucoma. Reimbursement is so critical, and our strategy there has played off really well. Also, we put a very unique pharmacy network into place, with a very strong value prop to the payers, and that's all born out of very good early launch trajectory. I think the things we think about were over 17,000 patients served in the fourth quarter. Over 6,000 eye care professionals wrote prescriptions for XDEMVY, which is remarkable. It's about 40% of all the doctors that we talk to with our sales force. And then our gross to nets are great. It really yielded a really meaningful quarter in terms of revenue, nearly $15 million in that initial launch period. So a lot of great momentum, and sort of thinking about all those things. I think the physician adoption has been really key. Great to see that over 6,000 of our colleagues have written the product and seen success with the product. And then the most important thing I think about is the clinical experience, right? So the most exciting thing for me, quite frankly, is the feedback we're getting from the physicians and the patients. The drug has performed extremely well, right? So we can talk about all the metrics, but the most important thing is, how's the drug doing? And it doesn't disappoint. We've seen just remarkable outcomes. The drug performs as well, if not better, than in the clinical studies. I get text messages, emails every day of before and after images. I think Liz has sent a bunch of before and after images where you're seeing, red, disease, crusted lids, and then 6 weeks later, you're seeing remarkable outcomes for these patients. And ultimately, that's what we're doing, right? We're making a big difference for these patients, and it's great to see that also translating into meaningful metrics across the board.
Great. With that, do you want to just take a quick break and present your slides?
I can't. We can. I spoke to him, so we're good. We can go.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
thanks.
Okay.
I think it's an amazing thing because, we think about dry eye back in the day, and we would, not really talk about dry or not really talk about blepharitis because we didn't know how to treat it, right? And the same thing kind of happened with Demodex. It's like, oh, you just have crusting on your lids, right? And then, XDEMVY comes out, and you can actually look and see the results so fast. Is when something comes to market, you're like, yeah, let me see if it really works. This works. So Liz, does this have any impact? We know the signs are getting better. Like, at 6 weeks, you're gonna see some improvement. What can we do now to improve our cataract outcomes, our refractive outcomes? Is this gonna translate into symptoms?
Yep. I think you bring up some great points. I think what was really, really important was that Tarsus put such a big focus that years preceding the launch, that one, we had the capital in order to actually prepare the market with the education, the disease state education in a ubiquitous disease that was not well understood, and that the disconnect between the presence, the whether or not the actual relevance of the disease actually existed and how prevalent it was. I mean, we definitely were not looking down to understand. I thought it was 20% when it was really closer to 60 to 70% of my population. And the more I looked, I recognized that it led to the erythema, which led to other things, the connection to rosacea, the connection to meibomian gland issues. And so I recognize that these are the issues. Yes, I absolutely do believe that the credibility is going to be, and the proof is in the pudding. Anyone who has treated, the reason that they rewrite for XDEMVY is because of the durability in the outcomes. We know with the extension data that 70% of patients have at least the same level of results and efficacy and cure at 6 months, and 60% maintain that at 1 year, and that's been published. And they also, it's like cataracts, and it's very satisfying because a lot of our cataract patients, you hear over and over again, I didn't even realize how bad it was until the cataracts were removed. And that's what they say about their symptoms. They didn't even realize that their foreign body sensation, the itching, the watering, was as bad as it was. They just thought it was a part of birthdays and seeing extra birthdays. And so, yes, there's some of that that's already, of course, we are anecdotally seeing it ourselves. We are gathering registry data, and we're so fortunate we're gathering more than expected. Plus, we have multiple different top-line results. We actually have 3 different positive phase 2 top-line results that were just released in the past few months that are all going to give more reason to treat, one being in the MGD space, one also being in dermatology with rosacea, but that's so connected to Demodex blepharitis. As we know, that's more commonly seen with ocular rosacea as well, and one with Lyme disease, which is extremely exciting as well. So there's multiple reasons, but absolutely, I do believe that the signs alone are so important, but that also leads to the symptomatology. And we know that certainly that lid margin disease and ocular surface disease can have that disconnect, but patients oftentimes, multiple studies do look to show that most patients, 90 to 99% of patients, have multiple symptoms.
Great.
You know, one of the things that can be challenging for a clinician and from the perspective of just overall adoption is, you know, identifying which patients are actually going to benefit. You know, a lot of people, many people, a huge percentage of people have Demodex blepharitis. How are you educating your sales force to then get the message out to tell which patients will benefit by this? You're just treating everybody, you know, because then there's going to be patients that maybe don't have symptoms and maybe the doctor loses confidence in the drug because nothing really happened. Like, how are you targeting the patients that are really going to benefit?
It's a great point, and we've been very thoughtful. I think this is an area we've gotten a lot of feedback, which we're grateful for in terms of how to approach this the right way and being very thoughtful and methodical about this. I think what we hear and what we're seeing in market is those first patients are typically the ones that have very clear collarettes, redness, typically have at least one complaint, right? So there's coming in saying something around itching or blurred vision or irritation. So it's a good trigger. So I say that's your sort of traditional Demodex blepharitis patient. And then we're encouraging that initial trial. And as you get success, and to Liz's point, the great thing here is that almost everybody that tries it is bringing patients back for a follow-up, and they see the difference, right? The patients resolve pretty quickly. They start to see an impact, and obviously at the end of 6 weeks, it's really remarkable. And what we've seen is once you get about 5 to 10 patients under your belt, then we see physicians start to think about other types of patients. And they start to think about, okay, well, I've had success in, you know, what we'd call a traditional, just obvious chief complaint Demodex blepharitis patient. Then they start thinking about, okay, I have a recalcitrant dry eye patient where maybe they failed a couple of different therapies. Let's take a closer look. And if they have collarettes, maybe we're not taking care of that part of the problem. And we see that progression, and then we start to see, as Liz mentioned, as you brought up earlier, okay, should I be pre-screening my cataract patients, right? And I love what we say around the office is ultimately, you know, we'd want to see patients come back and say, I can see better, I feel better, and my eyes look better. So you get the trifecta. So kind of starting with, you know, what I'd say is a chief blepharitis complaint, thinking about patients that are suffering from dry eye that aren't being addressed with current medications that have blepharitis actually as the underlying cause. And then things like cataract surgery and optometry, think about contact lens intolerance as another patient type as well. So we think those are the 4, and then obviously over time, we can engage consumers and have patients come in and more actively ask to be screened. But I think that's after we get more physician adoption and build a reimbursement base.
And then, you know, from the perspective of Demodex blepharitis as a clinician, you know, from the med affairs standpoint, you know, we know that Demodex blepharitis is not self-remitting. So it will never self-remit. And once you see the telangiectasis and the erythema across the lower lid, you know that inflammation is happening. Once that inflammation is happening, that's leading to functional edema, and that's going to affect the posterior lid margin, and that's when the connection to other comorbid states of the entire lid margin with disease is going to occur. So the idea of it's not self-remitting and it will lead to worse disease over time, those are 2 important things to recognize. So start with those, you know, I do think that where looking down, the more you have patients look down, you're going to find the obvious ones where patients are missing the lashes. These are the ones where you start with the easy one where it's a short course treatment and see what that does before you may consider moving on to a chronic treatment, particularly if you're saying, I don't think this is allergic conjunctivitis, let's just say, for example. But at that same time, it's recognizing that the collarettes plus the telangiectasis or the inflammation will lead to worse disease, and that's the reason to treat.
Great. So, but it's a one-hit wonder, right? So it's like a flea and tick. I feel like everyone should have it, right? You have it once a year. You get your fleas out, and then your little mites. I always get so itchy when we talk about this. Okay, so what else, Aziz, is in the pipeline? Because this is Tarsus Pharmaceutical, right? So what else? I mean, XDEMVY is going to be, in my opinion, a slam dunk. Okay, but what else is there?
Yeah, so as Liz mentioned, we've actually had 3 positive phase 2 studies read out in the last several months. Meibomian gland disease with XDEMVY, or TP03, was one of them. So we think about expanding the utilization there. That could be really compelling. That data set was really strong, and we're going to build off of that. And then we have a couple things outside of eye care. Rosacea, which actually may have some application in eye care too. If you think about, periorbitally treating rosacea that's around the eye, could be potentially something we'd look at. And then we have prevention of Lyme disease. So those are sort of maybe not eye care, but then we are actively looking at ways to enhance our eye care portfolio as well. We have a strong business development team, and over time, we'd love to have more products in the eye care bag, more products in the pipeline. And of course, we have a bias towards category creation, but we welcome feedback and ideas that our colleagues would think would be a good fit for us.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you guys so much. Very exciting. All right, let's move on now to Zeiss with the launch of the VisuMax 800 laser, which is very exciting. I'd like to welcome up Andy Chang and Dirk Muehlhoff. Okay.
Great, so now we treated our lids. We're ready for refractive surgery, okay? And you're launching the VisuMax 800. So Andy, tell me about how I want to be more of a refractive surgeon. I am excited about this technology, but we have, excimer lasers and femtosecond lasers already in our surgery center. How is someone like me, and what are the changes that have happened to say, you know what, when I really want to push, I'm going to push in the direction of lenticule removal?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to share certainly our journey where we've been. I really like to thank a lot of the pioneers of LASIK refractive surgery to get us to where we are today. And when I was talking to a lot of our new users in the United States and also around the globe, it is this journey. And we've taken away a lot of their feedback and applied it to the VisuMax 800 and taken away a lot of the hurdles that you may have heard of 7, 10 years ago. And I think that's the piece that's really changed between before and now. I like to also give Dirk the chance because he's basically our founding father of VisuMax and of Zeiss. So maybe Dirk, you want to add a few points there too.
Yeah, as Andy said, it has been a long journey. Actually, already in 2011, Zeiss launched the SMILE lenticle extraction procedure internationally and later then also to the United States. Since then, it has become even the dominating procedure in some of the major Asian markets, and we're looking forward to replicate the same here, obviously, in the United States. Zeiss has pioneered this technology, and now with the VisuMax 800, we're launching the 2nd generation. And we have the slide up here. I think there are some remarkable differences that you will recognize when comparing the 1st and the 2nd generation. The first thing is really the mind-blowing speed. And on the next slide also we have a video that we can look at. So with many changes to the system, it was possible to reduce the scanning time to create the lenticle from down to 10 seconds. And I think we need to click once more for the video really to come up on a large screen. If we can do that. Then you see it's really, this is the time that it takes from engaging the suction to do the entire laser scan and releasing the suction. And why does this matter? Of course, in terms of the overall procedure time, you could argue that doesn't make a big difference. But this is really the time when everybody is holding the breath, surgeon and patient included. And the faster that part is, the less problems there are, the less anxiety there is. And this also pays into the overall comfort level working with the system. And this has added also a lot of new technical features, in particular with regard to robotic assistance systems, where the laser now also has tools to help with the centration, with the correct centration of the treatment center, and also with the alignment of the torsional axis for the cylinder astigmatism. So those are, from a technical perspective, some of the major advantages.
It's great. You know, Dirk, it's really great having you up here because I think you're one of the very few people that are both the innovator and really the brains behind a technology and who's really like taken it into the business world and have seen it succeed. So thank you for that. I think that's really inspiring actually for us. You know, I have a question when it comes to the outside of the US market. You already have really great penetrance outside of the US. You know, SMILE is one of the most popular, if not the most popular refractive procedure in most of Asia right now. How is this gonna affect that? Do you expect to take more market share? Are you gonna see this expand into different markets? Like, where does this go from here?
Maybe I'll take the first little bit of the question. So what we do see is there's maturing of the market for SMILE in Asia. And we do see this opportunity coming in for the United States and maybe the Western world because you have some of the legacy platforms that are still out there that are fully functioning. Until those come of age, and I think they are, that gives us the opportunity to go back in and say, here's our chance to showcase what we can do, especially with the latest Gen 2 device. And the greatest thing that we're hearing is exactly like what Dirk said, is the anxiety of the patients. Patient experience is much better, patient comfort's better, and of course the surgeon anxiety as well within the procedure. The other piece that we didn't mention earlier is every part of our business has a digital workflow tied to it. So if you think about your current workflow within refractive, is still very manual. And that is the transition we're making, is that we can give you the registration, the eye scan, and then programming the laser all the way through seamlessly. That's really our goal.
Great. So back to my question.
Yes.
So how do I get this into my office? It's a high capital piece of equipment. And are we seeing the same results clinically? Or equivalent results, or a little bit better than LASIK? Dirk?
So that's actually a question you need to ask to the surgeons here in the room. But we just had an advisor meeting this morning that I may refer to, where you were attending as well, hearing some of our early adopters saying that the results are as good as, if not better, in terms of, in particular, with regard to patient-reported outcomes, so how patients perceive. And I think this has partially to do with the comfort of the device as it touches the eye, and the other part with regard to the lenticle extraction and how this mechanism is different from an eczema laser. Difficult to judge what contributes most to it, but I think there are both of these components. Also, I think back to the question of what is driving this, I think the patients, what prevents them from undergoing laser vision correction? A big portion of that is fear. And I think in this regard, also this procedure to be minimally invasive with only a small incision, there's no fear of flap complications, and in particular with active lifestyles of young people, that's a big motivation driver, that when educated patients compare for themselves, they're making the choice. And we see this in particular in Asia, that many actually have made their choice already when getting into the practice. They're actively asking for SMILE. I want SMILE and nothing else. So there certainly is a tipping point, momentum to get there, but I'm sure that we'll get there also on each and every country globally.
Great. Well, I want to congratulate Zeiss because, you know, the thing that we love about industry is when they listen and then you make a change, right? So there was no centration before. Now we have centration. Sometimes the lenticle would get stuck. Now it comes out a lot more smooth. The thing that I think may tip people is being able to go lower and lower on your ability to do refractive enhancements after cataract surgery and things like that. Are we any closer to the range being a little bit lower so we can get there?
So currently there is also a lower limit for the indication. We're working to expand this. We actually already did a study here in the United States together with some of the military sites. The data still needs to be analyzed and submitted, but that is something that is on our agenda to also lower that indication range.
And, you know, following up on that, you know, is there a world where there are no surface procedures, where you don't have a flap to lift, where everything just gets done in the stroma? Is that where
like
Zeiss
magic?
Like, exactly,
Like
magic. Can you do magic? Yes.
Can you do magic?
Please.
I personally think there will always be the room still for excimer lasers. They will not disappear. I'm 100% confident. Although we will see the indication range and the possibilities of femtosecond lasers expanding, I'm sure excimer lasers will still be there and will be a mandatory element of every serious laser vision correction practice.
Based on the patient profile, I think you have to have all the algorithms available to you and all the tool sets, and so we don't see that. But you know, Dirk is a physicist, so he doesn't believe in magic, so he'll figure it out.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys so much. All right, and then
So last but not least, we have Ron from RxSight. And, you know, this technology, I adopted the LAL, light adjustable lens technology, about 4 years ago. And for someone who hates dysphotopsia, I hate dysphotopsia, this lens quality and has improved at least the positive dysphotopsia that we're seeing from other high index of refraction acrylic lenses. This is a silicone lens with a lower index of refraction. What we really want is something with the least amount of dysphotopsia and the most range that we can get from that. Talk to us about where you were and where you are now with LAL+.
Well, thanks very much, Nicole and Julie, for having RxSight here. We're very excited to be commercially launching the LAL+ at the ASCRS meeting, and I'm happy to tell you a little bit more about that. Before I do, maybe I'll start with a little background about the LAL, which of course you two have a lot of experience with and a number of people in the audience. But you know, people I think have recognized over the last several years the benefits of adjustability. You know, the ability to deliver unparalleled refractive precision for sphere and cylinder, high quality vision, what you just referenced, and the ability to customize the vision in both eyes and take advantage of that symmetric depth of focus curve that the LAL has to really provide patients with excellent binocular range. We've taken that platform and the design intent of LAL+ was to build on it by adding a small continuous increase in central lens power molded into the anterior surface of the lens. And that provides benefits to the patient even before light treatments are performed. And it further extends the depth of focus on that myopic side of the depth of focus curve, which is indicated in the aqua here. But it maintains very high peak levels of the depth of focus curve, also shown here. If I could have the next slide. So we've been able to collect considerable pre-US launch data on the LAL+, and that data is going to be presented at the main ASCRS meeting later this week. But this slide shows a preview of that, comparing the distance-corrected visual acuity for LAL and LAL+ in a relatively large number of eyes. And it does that both in absolute terms on the left-hand side and then relative terms in terms of differences in lines of visual acuity on the right side. And what we see is that both the LAL and the LAL Plus both deliver excellent distance, or what we typically call best corrected visual acuity. There's a slight or moderate improvement in intermediate vision, but really significant improvement of over a line of near for the LAL Plus. And we believe that this data really corroborates the design intent of the LAL Plus with preservation of quality of vision, but providing additional intermediate and near. I should note that the process, both for the surgery and LDD treatments, is identical between the two lenses, and so surgeons can go between the two really based on the needs of the patient.
My question is, about the light treatments. Now, I love the LAL. I think it's great technology, but it's a substantial investment to get it into your office. You have to buy the light delivery unit, and then there's the adjustment procedures that you need to do afterwards. The patient has to come back, be refracted, and it's a fairly substantial alteration to the workflow. It took us quite a bit of time, actually, at UCSF to get that all established and set up. How are you going to expand access to the LAL and the LAL Plus, for that matter, in the U.S. market? How are you going to get more light delivery units? How are you going to help physicians be able to incorporate this truly amazing and groundbreaking technology into their practices? What are the plans like that going forward?
Well, it all starts with clinical outcomes. And so delivering the best clinical outcomes that we've seen in cataract surgery is number one. But like any technology, and I've got a long history in femtosecond lasers, when you're changing a paradigm, it takes a commitment not only on the part of the industry partner, but also on the clinical side. The clinician needs to be motivated to do that. We're fortunate in that there's both clinical motivation and economic motivation to do that. We've done a number of surveys on how the LAL is affecting practices, and what we see consistently is that we're growing the premium market within that practice. Over 40% of patients who get the LAL are patients that would have gotten a monofocal IOL. A third of patients would have gotten a lower priced toric IOL. So from an economics perspective, there's a very strong ROI, and that's really what's driven the expansion to, at the end of Q4, almost over 650 LDD units in the US. So obviously, it is a change in clinical practice, and just like every other thing in clinical medicine, we as clinicians need to, once we see the benefit of something, we need to modify how we approach our clinical practice, and that can be optimized. What surgeons are doing today in terms of IOL planning, that was not in existence 20 years ago. That is what over time has developed and been refined. And what our team has learned over the years is that the trick is to try to compress that learning. So what a large part of our company, about half of it, is focused on taking the learnings that individual practices like yours have come up with the original adopters of the technology, putting that into a process, and then disseminating that to new users. And so we see the impact of that, where new users adopt at a faster rate. They don't have to go through that same learning curve because, again, that's been established, a process has been established for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to convince someone who does a cataract surgery and the next day they're 20/20, and then they see them again in a month or never again back to their optometrist to then say, you know what, it's going to take 6 weeks for you to see well, right? And that was the hardest part. But when you think about how people are actually doing with their refractive outcomes, everybody thinks that we're doing much better than we are in cataract surgery. The range is 74% within a half a diopter, and sometimes if you're super meticulous, it can go up to 92%. But for those people that are really looking at their data, a lot of us were at, 72%. And that's not good enough for patients that want presbyopia correction or want distance correction. What I think is going to be most exciting is that with the LAL+, if it delivers, and we're hearing that it delivers, we have distance and intermediate covered. And there's less futzing with the mini micro mono, customized monovision, all of that. That means less visits. And that's where I think that this is going to really disrupt even the technology that you already started. So, time will tell. Are there any exciting things in the pipeline with multifocality, anything else happening besides increasing the continuous curvature and changing the depth of focus?
That question wasn't on the list.
Well, listen, I prepped you for this in the airport.
What I would say is we are committed to pushing this platform technology to its fullest extent. And that means, we continue to invest heavily in R&D. And the evidence of that is what we've done over the last number of years, continuously adding both to the LAL as well as to the LDD, the light delivery device, where we're able to make software changes that improve the technology, make it easier to use, provide better outcomes. And those are things that are going to continue for many, many years to come.
Great, wonderful. Well, guys, with that, I think we should wrap it up. Thank you so much to everyone, and thank you especially to my amazing co-moderator, Nicole Fram. So thank you.
Thank you.